Welcome to the Ottobock Experts OnDemand Education Series. This is a previously recorded webinar presented by Tim Schride. In this course, Tim will provide a 1-hour overview of Myo Plus pattern recognition for transradial upper limb prosthetic systems. Features, functional benefits, and clinical application will be presented along with system operation and compatibility. Please note that this course is approved by ABC for 1.25 CEU credits. However, this course does not qualify you for Myo Plus certification by Ottobock. In order to fit your patient with the system, please contact the Ottobock Education Team to request additional certification training. Please note that in order to receive credit for this overview course, you are required to take the quiz and pass with a minimum score of 80%. The quiz link can be found on our Experts OnDemand webpage or in the YouTube video description below. Enjoy the webinar.
My name is Tim Schride, and I am the leader of the Ottobock USA Upper Limb Clinical Team. And I've been with Ottobock for almost 11 years, and I am presenting to you today from lovely, rainy Seattle, Washington. So the topic of today is to introduce you to the bebionic hand by Ottobock and its combination with our new pattern recognition Myo Plus system. So we're going to jump right in, and this will probably take about an hour, maybe a little bit less, depending on how fast I talk. So if you find that I'm speaking too quickly, please just let Kaylee know via the chat feature, and she will let me know to slow down. So today we'll introduce you to the bebionic hand and the Myo Plus system as a combined system. We'll talk about the features, functions, and benefits of this system for both the users and also for the clinician who would be fitting it. We'll talk about the system overview and its compatibility with other Ottobock devices. We'll discuss how it's applied in a clinical way, and we'll discuss the fitting process from start to finish and how you would go about providing this new product to your patients. And then at the end, we'll show you some resources that you can access to get more information on these systems, and also how to contact our team if you need a clinical assistance or technical assistance. So Ottobock has been in the upper limb business for many years, starting in 1962 with the introduction of our system hands, our body-powered systems. And then in the middle 1960s, we introduced the first system electric hand. And since that time, we have been a leader in the field for bringing new products to market in the upper limb myoelectric segment in particular. We have a lot of products that we brought to market over the years, including the introduction of the quick disconnect wrist, which has now become an industry standard, the Myobock electrode in 1985, the Ottobock system hand 2000 for children, and moving through time, adding over the years many new products that improve the lives and the functionality of the people who use them and the people that you fit out there in the field. In 2017, we brought on board the Ottobock bebionic hand, and until very recently, this hand continued to be controlled by 2 electrodes, which has been the traditional way of controlling myoelectric systems for many years. And although this is a great way to operate a bebionic hand or many other the multi-articulating or multifunctional hands, it has left something to be desired in the ability of the patient or the user to access all of these features and functions. So today, we're going to talk about the addition of the Myo Plus pattern recognition system, which we introduced late last year at AOPA in September, and did the formal launch of it in January of this year. So first, I'd like to go through and do a bit of a review on the bebionic hand and how it functions and its features, and this will play directly into our discussion of the Ottobock Myo Plus system as well. So the bebionic hand is a bioelectrically controlled multi-articulating hand, which means the fingers of the bebionic hand move independently. Each of the 5 fingers has its own independent motor, which allows the hand to move in to various grasp patterns. The thumb is a mechanical thumb, and it is moved passively by the user from either an opposed or position or to a lateral position. There are a total of 14 different grip patterns that the hand is capable of providing. And there are 6 programs in the software that can be used to fine-tune or to customize the function of the hand for individual patient presentations. There are 3 different wrist options that are available. And one of the key factors of this hand is its very natural profile and design. It was designed to try to provide as lifelike of a hand as possible, both proportionally and functionally. And lastly, there is a glove available for the bebionic hand, but it is not required. We do recommend it, but it is not required. And in fact, many users in the United States choose to use this hand without a glove because they happen to appreciate the sort of robotic aesthetic of it. So when Ottobock purchased the bebionic hand from the Steeper company, which has been a little over 2 years ago now, we did revamp the hand and made some changes to this device I'd like to go through here briefly. One of these changes is that we optimized all of the tolerances in the hand. So previously, tolerances were at about a 1/100th millimeter, and those have now been increased to 1/1000th of a millimeter to improve the consistency of manufacturing and reduce the variabilities in the fabrication of the hand. At the same time, torque specifications were set for all the fasteners. So now this hand is manufactured. Everything is up to a certain specific standard, as well as lubrication for moving parts has been improved to, again, improve function. There's been an improved cable guidance system in the thumb, and this creates a more definitive fixation point in both opposition and lateral position. And this is important because the thumb is used as one of the methods of choosing different grip patterns. Also importantly is that the hand now meets IEC 60601 safety standards, and this is an international benchmark for safety in medical electronic equipment. This adds to the overall safety for our users and aligns with the Ottobock safety standards that we follow for all of our products. All of the wrist unit components have been converted to Ottobock units, and this has greatly improved the overall connection of the quick disconnect wrist in particular. And the use of the Ottobock wrist flexion unit also allows for 2 additional locking positions over the previously utilized motion control design. As you can see by this picture in the center of the screen, the hand is now branded with the Ottobock brand. And we've removed the previous orange bebionic brand that was on the hand, and that was a bit of a distraction for some people, and they did not appreciate that aesthetic. The new Ottobock bebionic hand has reduced battery consumption. The size small hand now uses 70% less power, so that's 2/3 less power than it did previously. And the size medium hand now uses 55% less power than the previous versions did. So the draw on the battery system is much less, allowing the batteries to go for a much longer period of time before needing to be charged. The bebionic hand has now also been converted from an analog interface to a digital interface, and which allows compatibility with the Myo Plus pattern recognition system and eliminates the need for an analog adapter when combining this hand with a dynamic arm. The software communication has also been standardized for both the small and the medium hands. Both are now using the Bluetooth-enabled orange and white dongle. So for all new Ottobock bebionic hands, the only dongle needed for communication with the hand for software programming is the orange and white dongle. The red RF dongle is no longer needed unless you are using an older, steeper hand. The bebalance software has also been updated to version 1.4, which this now provides an audible beep when programming is stored into the hand, so that you can be certain that the changes you've made in the software are now activated in the hand. So previously, in the steeper version of the hand, there were 4 different versions of the wrist that were available. There was a short wrist for longer limbs that needed reduced clearance needs. There was electronic quick disconnect or QD wrist. There was also a flexion wrist that you utilize motion control components, and a multi-flex wrist. With the introduction of the Ottobock bebionic hand, we still have the short wrist version, which again, these now utilize Ottobock components for consistency and better operation. We now still have the electronic quick disconnect unit, and we have the flexion unit as well. So these are the 3 units that are now available, and we have discontinued the multi-flex version of the hand. For battery systems, you will have 2 options with the bebionic hand. The one that we recommend is the Myo Energy Integral 757B35 equals 5. This has a capacity of 3,450 milliamp hours. So this is a significant amount of power that's available when operating the medium hand in particular, and also when you're combining with a powered wrist unit. And also if you were to combine with the Myo Plus pattern recognition system, this would give you plenty of power to operate the entire system. So I do recommend this particular battery if you have room and there's enough clearance in your definitive device. However, you may also choose to use the 757B35 equals 3. This has a capacity of 1,150 milliamp hours, and this is really only recommended for use with the small bebionic hand. And then for either battery, you would be using the MyoCharge Integral Charger 757L35, which is purchased separately from the battery systems. So I talked about 14 possible ways of using the hand in an earlier slide. So I just want to kind of quickly go through what those options are. So the thumb on the bebionic hand is moved passively from an opposed position to a lateral position or non-opposed position, and that movement of the thumb will decide or determine which grip patterns you will be in or you will be able to create. So in the opposed position, there will be either the possibility of a tripod grip or a 3-jaw chuck, if you prefer to call it that, or a pinch grip with the index finger and thumb only. You also can do a power or a hook grip with the thumb in the opposed position. Next, we have an active index finger. This is like you can move the finger from extension to flexion. This would be possible for doing something like activating a spray bottle or something of that nature. We have precision open. And this is where the index finger and the thumb come together, and the rest of the fingers are in an open position. You may also choose the same grasping feature with the thumb and index finger in precision closed, and in this case, the other fingers are in a closed or fully flexed position. Whenever the hand is in any position, whether the thumb is in the opposed position or the lateral position, you always have the ability to grasp items between the fingers using the adduction of the fingers themselves to grasp thin items like credit cards or DVDs or those kinds of things. When the thumb is moved to the lateral or non-opposed position, then you'll have the ability to activate the mouse configuration. So this allows the hand to operate a computer mouse by flexing the index finger and activating the button on the mouse. You can also go into key grasp, which is one of the 2 most commonly used grasp patterns. This allows the thumb to come to the side of the index finger and grab objects and keep them easily in the line of sight. In lateral position, the finger point mode is also available. This is a static position where the finger is fully extended, and you're able to use the finger to do things like type on a keyboard or other things like that where you'd want to have a rigid finger that could take has an extension stop on it. You can also go into column grip. This is where the thumb comes to just under the index finger and stabilizes it. And this is very useful for things like pushing elevator buttons or controls on, say, on a microwave or other things where you want to have a rigid sort of a knuckle that you can push against something to activate it without the finger flexing. The relaxed hand position allows the hand to go into relaxed position. So it's in a normal sort of relaxed configuration, which is very nice for when the hand is not being utilized. It can the thumb could be hooked in the pocket of your pants, for example, to allow it to rest there naturally and also perhaps take the weight of the prosthesis off of the patient's limb. Then lastly, the open palm position allows the hand to be in its maximum opening configuration with the palm up, and you can use this very nicely to hold flat objects, carry bowls, things of this nature. So who is an ideal bebionic user? When we talk about clinical application, who are we going to choose or consider for this particular technology? First of all, we recommend it be a unilateral amputee or a unilateral limb difference. They should be able to use an open or a co-contraction to switch between the patterns, the grip patterns within the hand. This is open is the recommended way of switching, and co-contraction we typically like to be reserved if necessary for going between a wrist and a hand. They must obviously want to have multi-articulating fingers and be willing to learn how to use the hand appropriately and make use of those various features and functions. They should not engage in heavy labor types of activities using this prosthesis. We recommend they have a secondary device, perhaps a Greifer or a standard single degree of motion Ottobock hand if they are going to be doing other activities that might surpass the limits of the bebionic hand. They need to be compliant with water resistance. The bebionic hand is not waterproof. It is similar in resistance to your cell phone, so it should be protected from water in all situations whenever possible. They need to understand that the thumb is a mechanical thumb, which means they need to manually or passively position it between lateral mode and opposition mode. And they should, above all, have realistic expectations about how this hand works, what they can do with it and what they cannot do with it, and the kinds of activities that it is designed for. We recommend that for bilateral limb difference users that they use the bebionic as a secondary prosthesis or in combination with an electric hook or single grip hand on the opposite side. So switching events. So we have this hand that has multiple grip patterns. There's a potential of 8 different grip patterns that can be programmed into any one hand at any given time. So obviously the user of this hand needs to be able to go between or choose those grip patterns that they would like to utilize. So the purpose of this WebEx today is not to go into detail on the software, but I will briefly explain how the switching events take place. So within the software, you can program the hand so that they can use either an open signal, which means they open the hand up fully, relax for a split second, then send another quick open signal, and the hand will then switch to an alternate or secondary grip pattern at that point. They may also use co-contraction, but as I said, we prefer that be reserved for wrist switching if possible. The other way they can change from one grip pattern to another is to use the program switch button on the back of the hand. That button will take them from a set of 4 primary grip patterns to a set of 4 secondary grip patterns. And then the third method for switching grip patterns is to move the thumb from the lateral position to the opposition position. So there are 3 different ways that the user can get between the various grip patterns that are programmed into the hand. The other option is for them to use our new pattern recognition Myo Plus system. So this eliminates Actually, this is a mistake. This does not eliminate all three switching mechanisms. The thumb is still used to switch between lateral and opposition mode, but using the Myo Plus system will eliminate the need to do open-open or co-contraction, and it will eliminate the need to use the button on the back of the hand. So when we talk about myoelectric control, and historically we've used 2 electrodes, perhaps some switches or other electronic devices like that to create control of myoelectric hands and wrist units, etc. But why is advanced control, something like the Myo Plus pattern rec system, why is advanced control now necessary? Well, with the combinations of devices that we now have available, initially we had single degree of freedom hands, or things like the Greifer, where they opened and closed only. But then again, if we also install powered rotators into these systems, now we have a hand that opens and closes. We have a wrist that rotates in both directions, and we really have 4 different functions that the hand and the wrist system are needing to be operated by. Then if we add something into the system like a multi-articulating hand, perhaps the Michelangelo hand or a bebionic hand, now we're functioning with open and closed, pronate, supinate, and in the case of a Michelangelo hand, the thumb is moving automatically from opposition to lateral position. And in the case of the bebionic hand, now we have not just open and close and pronate, supinate, but now we have 8 different programmed grips that the patient can access. So as technology has increased and we provide more and more features and functions for users of these products to make use of, they become more and more complex, and the normal ways or the typical ways of accessing these features and functions can become very complex and become less and less intuitive the more complex these devices become. So to gain the full potential of a hand like the bebionic hand, we want to be able to provide direct access to each of the features and functions that this hand can provide. So if possible, we'd like to eliminate co-contraction or open-open, so we don't have to do sort of artificial signal creation to access these various grip patterns. So if we look at a bebionic hand, we'll have 8 different grip patterns that we can access. Plus, if we have a powered rotator, we'll have rotation in 2 directions. So that's 10 different features and functions that the patient has the potential to access. And although it is certainly possible to do it with 2 electrode input, many people do it very successfully. If we can find a way to make this even easier for the users, then I believe that we can expand the field of potential users of this technology and improve even more lives. So this is a short video that kind of shows you how the neurological system, the human body works when we have an intact hand. So the central nervous system of the brain communicates with the nervous system with the musculature that drives the hand, that's the fingers, the wrist, etc. And when we think of doing a particular grasp pattern with our hand, that signal will send down through the appropriate muscles, and that activation occurs in the hand. After amputation, many of these neurological connections and muscles may still be intact. So the Myo Plus pattern recognition system is able to record these remaining phantom limb activities from the central nervous system and record these patterns of muscle activity. They can then be assigned to functions in the prosthetic hand that are most closely related to the phantom limb that the patient still has remaining. This creates a very intuitive control and can eliminate all of the artificial switching mechanisms that we typically use to provide function for those with limb loss. This allows the prosthetic system to provide much more intuitive control of the prosthesis. And because the user or the patient is determining what they have available in their phantom limb, they are now in control of the prosthesis, and the prosthesis is being programmed to operate in a way that is controlled by them instead of the other way around. So with the Myo Plus, the advantages of this system are that recordings of movement patterns are done via the Ottobock Myo Plus app. So both the fitting clinician and the user of this technology can have an app on their iPhone or their Android that allows them to have access via Bluetooth to the Myo Plus system. So each function of the prosthesis, whether it be a wrist rotation or a grasp pattern, is assigned a specific pattern that is established by a unique and intuitive, simple, and repeatable phantom hand movement. So the patient is able to work with us, or we work with the patient to help them determine what kind of motions can they imagine doing in their phantom limb. And then we can use those motions and the muscle activity that they create to assign that activity to a specific function within the hand. So this customization of patterns by the user makes for a much more intuitive control. And the direct selective movements is possible with no switching needed between grips or wrist rotation. This allows them to have much more precise, proportional control of the prosthetic functions. They can also add or take away prosthetic movements if they'd like to via their own app. So they have the patient or the user has direct access to their system, and they can go into the app and either add new prosthetic motion, or they can eliminate or temporarily disable certain functions that they would like to. So they're able to go into the settings on the app, and they can have visual feedback for training, and they're able to have a visual interface through the app to help them fine-tune their control and to have a better understanding of how their system is working. Also, if you have a user who is going between a bebionic hand and a Greifer, for example, when they take the bebionic hand off of their system and attach the Greifer, the system will automatically adjust to know that they are now using their Greifer, and the control of that device will be set automatically. So this is a new control system, the Myo Plus, and so there is compatibility with the bebionic hand from Ottobock and also the MyoBox system from Ottobock. For example, the sensor hand speed, the Myo Hand Very Plus speed, the Greifer, those are the main other products Ottobock that this system is currently compatible with. But as always, the instructions for use, which comes with the system, will give you detailed information about other hands and systems that may be compatible. So the system is compatible with all versions of the Ottobock bebionic hand, whether it be the quick disconnect version, the short wrist version, or the flex version. Again, it's compatible with the sensor hand speed, Myo Hand Very Plus speed, and the Greifer, as well as a few other devices like our DMC Plus hands, our transcarpal hand, and the DMC Very Plus hand. As discussed earlier, it is compatible with the Myo Energy Integral, the 757B35 equals 3 or 5. It's compatible with our standard Ottobock powered wrist rotator, the 10S17. And just as a note, if you are using the powered wrist rotator with the Myo Plus system, the myoelectronic microprocessor for the wrist rotator is not needed. And then if you are using a system without a powered rotator, then you would use the standard coaxial plug combination of the 9E169 and the 10S4. So what is new with the Myo Plus system? So the new components that comprise the Myo Plus system are the Myo Plus TR, This is the microprocessor unit, or the brains of the system. And then we have the electrode domes. These are button type of electrodes, and the domes come in 3 different sizes or heights. Each dome also has a cover that goes over the outside electronics of the electrode to protect the system on the outside of the inner socket. These are utilizing remote electrodes. This is a new product designed specifically for the Myo Plus system, and these come in 2 different lengths, and they come in 2 different types. We'll discuss that more in a minute. We've already discussed the Myo Energy Integral Battery, 757B35 equals 5. The Myo Cuff is a diagnostic and testing tool that can be utilized without a bebionic hand or other terminal device. This allows you to put the cuff on a potential user and evaluate their various patterns to determine whether they might be a successful user or not, or it can also be used as a training tool to fine-tune their patterns before fitting. The Myo Plus app is available for both iOS and Android phones, and this is the interface for the system, which connects via Bluetooth and allows you to not only see the patterns in real time, but also to test the system and make adjustments both as a clinician and as a user of the system. We also provide an electrode positioning gauge. This allows you to estimate where the electrodes will go on a socket, so you can mark the holes and mark where the holes will be and then drill those holes for the button electrodes to go into the socket. So a little more detail about the Myo Plus TR. Again, this is the central processing unit of the Myo Plus system. This allows up to 8 remote electrodes to be connected, and those electrodes are then what will measure the muscle information coming from the patient's contractions and allows it to create the patterns that will then be used to control the prosthesis. So it receives and processes the EMG signals and then assigns them to each prosthetic function. It's taking a great deal of data. Up to 72,000 EMG samples are taken per second, and they are processed to update the movement commands of the prosthesis 40 times per second. So this is a very fast system, taking in a great deal of data and processing it to provide the function and the stability that the system requires. So you do not need to use all 8 electrodes that are possible. If you have a small limb and there isn't enough real estate to have all 8 electrodes in the system, you may use fewer than 8, and then you just would plug them into the Myo Plus TR using the lower numbered ports first and leaving the higher numbered ports open. So the remote electrodes, again, are a new product from Ottobock designed specifically to work with the Myo Plus system. And these have a very low installation height of less than 5 millimeters. So they are not intrusive and do not create a great deal of bulk, despite the numbers of them that are required for the system. And they are very simple and flexible positioning as possible due to the flexible design of the electrodes. The actual amplifier is remote from the buttons, which allows you to tuck them in distally into the socket and reduce the bulk of the system. The cables come in 2 different lengths, either 90 millimeter or 140 millimeter. 90 millimeter is more than adequate for most transradial systems. And they come with either 2 or 3 contact poles. In a full system, you would use 6 poles with 2 contacts, and you would use 2 electrodes with 3 poles, and the 3-pole electrodes are the grounded ones. So you'd have to have at least 1 grounded electrode in the system, but up to 2 if you're using a full set of 8 electrodes. And again, these come with 3 different dome sizes, which allows you to choose domes that will provide the best contact at various points within the socket. And in most cases, you will probably be mixing and matching dome height to make sure that the socket is stable and that the contact with the electrodes and the skin remains stable. So the Myo Plus app is the central adjustment software for the system, and it allows the clinician and the user to check the functionality of their system and do a great deal of troubleshooting. So once connected, you will see a spider plot, as you can see on this graphic here. And the spider plot shows the 8 different pairs of electrodes that are placed around the limb. And each electrode pair has its own color, which makes it easier to evaluate what is happening. So as different electrodes are touched, you can see patterns being created. This allows you to have the patient go through various phantom limb motions with their limb, and you can see what different patterns are coming up on the screen, and that allows you then to compare them to see if they are different or if they are too close or too similar in shape. It also allows you to record the data for each function of the prosthesis. The data recording screen takes you very simply through the recording process, and this is something that the patient can learn to do on their own as well, and they can use this at home to add new grasp patterns basically at will. You can train and improve movement patterns, and one of the tools that's available in the app is this movement quality screen, which basically rates the various functions of the hand with stars from 1 to 5. This gives you some information on how accurate the patterns are or how clean they are, and very low numbers of stars may indicate that some more training is necessary for the user. The patient can also go in and adjust the speed and other advanced settings in the system. They can determine where they want the hand to move slower or faster at its maximum speed, or adjust the rotation speed, and a variety of other things that they can access on their own to improve or to fine-tune their function for their own particular needs. They may also go in and selectively disable particular motions or functions in the prosthesis. So they may, for example, want to make sure that the hand would not rotate in a particular social situation or something, and so they can go in and temporarily deactivate those functions. It is available for download from the Google Play Store or from the Apple App Store. So who would we recommend Myo Plus for? So this system can be used for anybody who is a new or existing prosthetic user who can produce EMG signals. In fact, there may be people out there who previously could not make use of a myoelectric system because they weren't able to produce EMG signals that were large enough for the existing technology at the time to pick up and make use of. But with this new technology using pattern recognition, you may find that there are people who can now make use of a myoelectric system who could not before. This system is currently available only for transradial and transcarpal amputation levels. It does have a minimum requirement of 4 centimeters of clearance for the hand and the other components to be able to clear the socket and maintain a normal limb length. It can be fit to both traumatic or congenital etiology users. It can be fit to unilateral or bilateral amputations. It's particularly helpful for those who have difficulty with myosignal separation. So if they have signals that tend to rise and fall together and they are not able to separate those adequately, the Myo Plus pattern rec system may be an option for them to give them function they wouldn't otherwise be able to get. You have to have weak or unbalanced signals. With this system, we are not concerned so much about the strength of signals. It's the overall pattern that's created when groups of muscles are contracted. So very small or weak signals are just as important as bigger signals. So this may also open up opportunities for fitting that were not previously available. So this would fall into the category of those who have not been able to function with standard 2-site control, where this has failed. The Myo Plus system could be a very good option. Also, those who have mode switching challenges, if they aren't able to co-contract, if they aren't able to do an open signal, or any of the other various switching mechanisms that are available out there, that those are challenges for them and they're not able to create reliable function, the Myo Plus system may help them overcome that. And lastly, anybody who wants to have a fast and intuitive control, they want to have a system that feels more natural and that feels more intuitive, the Myo Plus pattern rec system could be a very good option for them. So currently, who are contraindications for this system? So these amputation levels are not possible with the current system. We cannot fit transhumeral patients, partial hand patients, or shoulder disarticulation patients. The system is designed currently for standard transradial or transcarpal users. So some patients may need more training when they initially start to be fit with the system. Their patterns may not be separated enough for reliable function, but what we found that with some training, we can oftentimes overcome those issues fairly quickly and fairly easily by simply prompting them to try to move their phantom limb in a slightly different way, to recruit a slightly different muscle group than they maybe previously were. So a little bit of training is very helpful with the system, and the graphic user interface that's available on the app is very useful for training patients and helping them to understand how the system works and how the pattern variation can be important. So what does the fitting process look like? Really, it's broken down into 6 different stages. We have the initial session. We have a process of evaluating the phantom sensation. This particular part of this protocol is very important. It's important that we understand what the potential user has available as far as their phantom limb. What do they feel like they can move in their phantom limb? Is it tight? Does it feel cramped? Do they have the ability to open the fingers or just one finger or rotate the wrist? All of these various things are very important for identifying what sort of phantom limb activities we can expect them to be able to create, and then what would be the most intuitive functions in the hand and prosthetic system to assign those various patterns to. Then we'll do, once we have had that conversation with the potential user, then we can do the evaluation with the Myo cuff, and this will allow us to actually see the individual patterns on the screen and determine whether they are different enough to be assigned to specific functions in the hand. Then we would move on to training and testing of these patterns. Here we're going to fine-tune the patterns that the user is able to create and establish what patterns are we going to go ahead and use for control. Next, we would create the basic set, and the basic set is the basic data that is programmed and saved into the system. That this is done by the prosthetist, and this can never be changed by the user. They have the ability to make other adjustments in the system, but they can never go in and affect the basic set, which is used to create the basic algorithms that allow the system to function. Lastly, there will be prosthesis training, where the patient is taught how to use the prosthesis and how to be as effective as possible with its various functions. And we'll talk about this prosthesis training more in a moment. So going back into the fitting process, the initial session, again, is extremely important, and you may very well spend, excuse me, a great deal more time on this process than you would normally in a standard myoelectric evaluation. Obviously, we want to assess the residual limb, the length, strength of the limb, range of motion, sensation, skin condition, and then again, as I said, discover if phantom sensation is present and what they have available. So other things to consider, as with any myo or upper limb evaluation, is their prosthetic history, their hand dominance, what is the environment they live and work in, their goals, their personal goals, and their daily activities. It's very important that we design a system that meets their specific goals and their activities, and that they have realistic expectations of what this system can do for them. And of course, they also have to have gadget tolerance. And this is particularly true when we start talking about more advanced systems with more features and functions. So when evaluating phantom hand movements, we really want to be able to develop an understanding of what are the differentiated movements of their phantom limb. Every user will be different as to what they have available or what they can imagine moving in their phantom hand. And so we want to really dial in with them and determine what they have available. And having them reproduce their phantom limb movements on their sound side is a very good way to help tease out what they have available and be able to differentiate them as much as possible. So doing this process will greatly facilitate the training with the Myo Plus, give them a head start once we connect them to the system and to the Myo cuff. They'll know what we are looking for, and they'll be able to reproduce those with accuracy. And again, we are looking to determine what their phantom limb motions are so that we can determine what are the most appropriate hand or system features to assign those phantom hand motions to. So we want this control to be as intuitive as possible. Also, this allows us to potentially increase the range of possible movement patterns. So if we can teach them to tease out the different phantom hand functions that they have available, then we can increase the number of patterns they're capable of repeatedly creating, and this gives us more options for controlling more features and functions in the system. So some tools that we can use when we are evaluating these phantom hand movements is to always be consistent with starting positions. So we always want to know where the phantom limb is in space or then throughout its range of motion when we start, and having them use their sound side really helps with this, because we can have a visualization of what they are thinking and feeling on their affected side. So demonstrating for them and giving them verbal cues is very important, so that you're communicating with them what you're looking for, and they're able to communicate back to you what they are feeling and what they are doing. Mirror therapy has proven to be very efficient and helpful in training for upper limb prosthetic use, and this may also be very helpful in training and determining the various phantom limb activity that they can create. Also, don't forget that if you have existing users who have, say, for example, always used wrist extension for opening and wrist flexion for close, they're still able to use those same functions or same muscle contractions to do open and close if that's what they prefer. But the system also gives them the opportunity to perhaps find more intuitive phantom hand functions that can be assigned to, say, for example, open and close. You may want to use finger extensors or finger closers if they have that available. So I'm not going to go through all of these in great detail, but this gives you some information and some ideas of how we might be thinking of phantom hand movements and how we can assign them to the various features and functions of the hand. So, for example, if we're looking at open hand at the top of that chart, you can see we could use anything from opening all the fingers at once, perhaps extending the wrist, or also perhaps extending the wrist and closing the fingers in sort of the tenodesis effect might be a way of creating a pattern that can be used for open hand. Keep in mind that if the patient does not have the ability with their phantom limb to imagine opening all their fingers, but perhaps they can imagine opening one finger all the way or opening it part way, that could be the muscle pattern that we can capture and then assign to hand open, if that would be more intuitive. Same thing with closed hand. It can be a matter of having them close all of their fingers if possible, or it could be just closing the thumb and the index and middle finger together, et cetera, et cetera. So again, we're looking for those things that they're capable of imagining in the phantom limb, that they're able to repeat, and then we can record that pattern and assign it to that intuitive feature or function of the hand. Palm up and palm down can sometimes be a little bit tricky. Sometimes these functions in the phantom limb can look very much like hand open or hand close. So when you initially test for this, you may find that the pattern for palm up, for example, looks similar to hand open. So in that case, what we can do is coach the user or prompt them to try to imagine as they rotate their wrist, perhaps bringing their little finger in to sort of lead the rotation, or use the thumb to lead the rotation. So we get a little bit different variance in the muscles that are being recruited than we would get, say, for hand open. And so a little bit of training in that area can oftentimes create very different patterns that will give us much clearer control or more reliable control of that particular function. We can also go in for each of the individual grip patterns that are available in the system. And again, we're going to look for those things that are most closely related to the features and functions we want to provide in the prosthetic system. So, for example, if we're using pinch grip or column grip, we can try to find a phantom limb motion that is as close as possible to that particular grasp pattern. Active index, we may look at finger point, or perhaps we'll bring the thumb in and to extend and flex along with the finger, and that could then be assigned to the active index finger function. Same thing with precision open, either with the other fingers open or closed. We can look at bringing the index finger to the thumb. That would be the most direct, most intuitive phantom hand function that we could find that would be directly related to precision grip in the hand. But again, maybe the patient isn't able to reproduce that with their phantom limb, but we look for something that's close to that we could assign to that particular grasp pattern. So once we have had a good conversation and really delved into what the user is capable of with their phantom limb, now we can begin evaluating them with the Myo cuff. So the cuff is used to evaluate the movement patterns before fitting. The cuff is placed over the limb, and it's connected via Bluetooth to the app on your phone or iPad or other Android device. And we can see very, very quickly on the spider graph what the various patterns they're able to create look like. And we can very quickly make a determination as to whether these various patterns are different enough to be assigned to individual functions in the hand. So we put the cuff on, and we'd have them go through the patterns or the phantom limb functions that we discussed, and have them try to reproduce those, and then we would evaluate those patterns in the app to see if they are potentially usable. So the numbers of patterns required will depend on the system that is being designed, or the potential system that's being designed. So, for example, if you're using a bebionic hand on its own with a passive wrist unit, then you would be looking for 4 different patterns that they could access the 8 different grasp functions with. If you're adding a powered rotator in there, then you'd be looking for 6 patterns, etc. So when applying the cuff, it's desirable to put the cuff on so that electrode pair number 1 and pair number 8 are on either side of the ulna. This just helps us to identify the medial flexor compartment and the lateral flexor compartment, and just gives consistency to your evaluation on the spider plot screen. There is no muscle belly over the ulna. There's no point in having electrodes over that. So each system will come with its Bluetooth ID, a pin, any pin for the cuff, and those are found on the card that comes with the system. So you will have that to connect to the app as a clinician, and also the user can connect to their app with that same pin. So this is showing live on the spider plot what these different phantom limb patterns would look like. So each of the numbered squares is a electrode pair, and here you can see they are all in black, which means we have good contact around the limb, and all the electrodes are remaining in good contact with the skin. So this spider plot represents a cross-section of the transradial limb. Again, the muscle patterns are displayed in gray. The closer the pattern is to a number, it indicates the stronger that particular electrode pair is being activated in that particular pattern. So initially, you're going to be looking at evaluating open, close, supinate, and pronate. Those are the 4 patterns that we're going to be recording into our basic set, which creates the basic foundation for the algorithm that will control the system. So the whole goal of this is to create unique and consistent patterns that the user can recreate. So even very slight differentiations to the phantom movements can make a big difference in the pattern shape. So again, we don't looking for dramatic differences here. Even just slight differences can be very useful. This spider plot is unique to the Myo Plus system. It is patented in the United States, and it is a very useful tool for both the user and the practitioner in evaluating how their system is functioning and providing them with the training that they need to activate the system. So again, if we're going to evaluate Myo patterns, we're looking, if we can, for completely different shapes. Here we see that hand open and hand supination or wrist supination are very different. In this case, they're very close together. They're quite similar. So that may or may not be different enough. Again, we have 2 very different patterns here, which would be ideal. And then in this situation, there's a great deal of overlap, and the differences may still allow function, but it may not be as consistent as we would like. So if the patterns look too similar, we're going to go ahead and have the patient try to modify their phantom limb movement and see if we can tease out a slightly different pattern from that. If the patterns still remain too similar, then we can go ahead and seek out a different, completely different phantom movement to use in our recording, and that will give us improved function. So the spider plot training screen has a pattern scaling feature. Oops. Which is located at the bottom of the spider plot screen. And this allows you to increase the size of the movement pattern for better visualization and differentiation. This is not an amplification tool. It simply just makes the graph larger so you can see the patterns more easily, particularly if there's a lot of overlap or the patterns are very small. If you disable the pattern scaling feature, then this will reveal the actual strength of the muscle contractions. And the stronger the contraction, the closer the signal will be to the electrode number. That will allow you to evaluate whether the patient is contracting strongly enough, or perhaps you need to have them bring in a slightly different muscle group in the recording process. So the entire process for creating a basic set includes 6 different recordings. However, before we go into creating a basic set, which is written into the software, into the system, and becomes the basis for all of its function, we would like to first do a test set. So we would do 2 recordings with the system first with the arm bent at 90 degrees, and we would go in and we would record 2 sets or 2 rounds of this data, and then we would click on create test set, and that would allow us to see the patterns on the spider plot in color and do a comparison of all 4 of the different patterns that we initially are creating. Okay, so here, this is the pardon me, I think I've gone to the wrong screen. So you are able in the software to choose a pause time for the breaks. So we will be recording both, for example, hand open and then relaxation, hand close and then relaxation, etc. So you can choose the amount of time that the system is in the relaxation phase to give the patient more time to relax between functions. So once you go into the recording screen, it is going to record a full cycle of relaxation and then muscle activity. You can pause the recording at any time if you need to, and then restart. The blue bar is the pause time or the relaxation time. This will go 1 full cycle of relaxation, and then the center picture will show you what the next function is. In this case, it's hand open, and as soon as the patient starts to contract their phantom limb, then the red bars will begin to record, and the idea is to have them contract softly at first and then grow into an 80% of their full potential contraction strength. Once they reach that, they will go into the relaxation phase, and then the next hand function will appear, and they will then record that function as well. So recording, or the red phase, does not begin until the user begins to contract their muscles, and it will pause if necessary. If their muscle strength does not continue to get stronger and stronger, it will pause and allow them to continue to increase their strength. So we'll go through, an initial recording is going to always be hand open, hand close, pronation, and supination. Okay, so we would do that twice. And you'll get a green check on the test screen when you've completed each set. You will click on create a test set, and you'll get an OK showing that that has been accomplished. And then it will take you to 1 of 2 screens. You can choose the spider plot screen, or you can choose the movement display screen to evaluate their function. The spider plot screen is very useful because now you can see that each of the 4 patterns they created are color-coded, with red being hand open, blue being hand closed, orange being supination, and green being pronation. This allows you to very quickly look at this and see, okay, as they create these phantom limb motions again, the pattern that's being picked up or recognized will be highlighted, and then below the spider plot will show them a graph of what function the hand would be going to. And so this allows you to test for accuracy and consistency in their function. So if the spider plot shows the patterns that have too much overlap and not enough differentiation, you can see that visually, but then also below you can see it in the hand or the grass pattern that comes up underneath the spider plot. Additionally, when looking at the movement display, as the patient operates or activates the phantom limb, the pattern that's being activated will also show on this screen in the middle and be a cue for them, showing them what the hand would be doing in that particular situation. So if you've determined that the patterns that they've created in the test set are differentiated enough and function is consistent, and they're able to reach the features of the hand with uniformity and consistency, then you can go on and complete the basic set training. So in this case, we would add two more sets of training with the arm hanging at the side and also with the arm stretched out in front of them. This allows us to grasp the different patterns that may become available depending on where the prosthesis is held in space, so that we have consistent function that would come through and for most of the patients, they'll ADL. So we need to go through all 6 of these trainings before we can create the basic set, and this is a prerequisite to permanently storing the Myo Plus control in the myocuff or in the finished prosthesis. It's a good idea to have the patient stand for the last 2 training positions if possible. And this puts the limb in a more natural position and will better replicate where they may be using their prosthesis in their actual activities of daily living. So it's also possible to add additional patterns, and you may want to consider recording the 4 basic movements again in various planes, for example, with the prosthesis held overhead, out to the side, or down by the shoe, etc. Particularly if the patient tells you that they have difficulty or inconsistency of operation when they use the prosthesis in a certain position. That's a good time to go in and add another layer of data. This system allows up to 30 layers of data to be recorded. In most cases, for typical training, they're using 15 or so of those layers. So there's still 14, 15 or more layers available for them to add into the system. And the more layers of data that are recorded just reduces the frequency of calibration and the accuracy of the system. For bebionic, when you're training open and close, power grip and key grip are the default close for the bebionic. So when you're training open and close, the patient will always have power grip when the thumb is positioned in the opposition position, and they'll have key grip when the thumb is in the lateral position. To add additional grip patterns, you would go to the Add Pattern menu and select a grip from the select a grip from the list by clicking on the circle, and then you would go to Record, and you would then record the phantom limb activity that the user would like to assign to that particular grasp pattern. The user is able to access this feature at home, so they can add new grasp patterns at home. It's not necessary for all of them to be programmed in the system all at once in your office. They may also add more layers of recordings to make the system more robust. Also, in the app settings, the patient may be able to go in or can go in and make adjustments to their system. They can adjust the open and closing speed, the rotation speed, and several other things that they can access to change the sensitivity of the system for different situations, etc. In the prosthesis movements on the menu, the user can go in and they can deactivate certain hand functions that they've recorded into the system that they'd like to. For example, they may want to disable a pronation or supination for activities where they would not want the hand of the system to rotate involuntarily. Or they may want to disable certain movements while they're working on improving their patterns for others. This may be especially helpful for users that are new to the bebionic hand and the use of multiple grip patterns allows them and you to simplify the system and then gradually add grasp patterns as they become better users and more able to make use of these different features. One of the app features is the movement quality screen. This allows you the opportunity to look at or review the quality of the recorded movement patterns. This is done by a simple star rating system. Each recorded movement can be awarded up to 5 stars. A movement with 5 stars will be one that is clearly recognized and they have consistent creation of. However, the fewer stars that are awarded, the more difficult it is for the Myo Plus system to distinguish the movements. So this can be a useful way of evaluating their progress and documenting their progress with the system. However, be aware that this may not be extremely accurate, particularly in the beginning. The spider plot is still your best tool for evaluating the differentiation of their patterns. And even on the spider plot, 3 stars for a given motion is more than sufficient to get consistent and regular function of the system. And 1 or 2 stars doesn't mean that the pattern is bad. They just may need more training to distinguish it a little more strongly. So let's look at how the test sockets and the final prosthesis would be set up. We recommend that the test socket be made of flexible material. This allows for the electrodes to be placed appropriately and to make sure that they remain in contact with the user's soft tissue. We also recommend that they use the parachute sock dotting method. This again just makes sure that all the soft tissues are pulled into the socket and that the socket and the soft tissues are always aligned to ensure consistent fit and consistent contact with the electrode domes. We recommend that you use the electrode positioning gauge, which is included with the system. This simply allows you to accurately position the electrodes with appropriate spacing and to optimize their location in the socket. The forearm section may be used by anything that you typically use for a rough trial setup, whether it be thermoplastic or whether you use fiberglass casting tape to create a forearm. Whatever system you're most comfortable with using or what you've used in the past is just fine. And lastly, of course, you want to make sure that you always check the overall length so that the system is at the correct length for your particular user. So let's go ahead and look at a test socket setup and how you do a system check. Once the system is complete and you have Bluetooth connectivity to it, you'll see the spider plot as you see here. And all you do is simply tap on the electrodes, and you will see each of those electrode pairs light up, and you'll see a pattern created by each one. So it's very easy to quickly test the system before you put it on your user and make sure that everything is functional. If you were ever to see the electrode number pairs shown in red on the screen, that would be an indication that you have a loose or disconnected wire, or there's some other electrical obstruction with that particular electrode, and you want to recheck your connections. So let's talk about prosthetic training. Prosthetic training will largely depend on the terminal device or the components used in the system, and it will differ depending on the initial pattern quality that the user is able to create with their phantom limb. So if Myo Plus control is not yet sufficient, or they're having difficulty creating dependable patterns, then your training really should focus on distinguishing these movement patterns. You want these to be repeatable and accurate before you move into actual training with the prosthesis to reduce frustration and also to increase confidence in the prosthesis. As shown earlier, some movements may need to be deactivated in the beginning to simplify things and allow the patient to focus on specific areas where they need to have more practice or training. Then you can proceed step by step, adding in different features and functions until the patient is able to use these prosthetic features in their daily life. So what does this look like? So we break the training down into three different processes. The first being controls training. And this is really an opportunity for the user to learn how to use all the features and functions of the system before they do anything with it in an active manner. So you want them to be able to follow explicit commands, open and close their hand, rotate their wrist on command. There should be no random movement. In other words, they should have good, direct control of the system with nothing happening that's unwanted or unintended. They should be focusing on the optimal use of the prosthesis, able to become familiar with all of the features and functions and be able to access those features and functions without the added difficulty of having to manipulate objects as well. So they should be able, at the end of this controls training, to exhibit and make use of all the passive and active functions that their particular system is capable of doing. And in this process, the app makes for a very nice tool for them. They can visually see their patterns and see the actual function occurring in their prosthetic hand and relate this to the phantom limb motions that they are creating. You can see how quickly this particular user is switching between the various features and functions because they are not having to co-contract, they're not having to touch the button on the back of the hand, they're simply contracting their phantom limb in specific patterns, which is creating immediate function in the hand. So then the second phase of training is the repetitive drill stage. So the goals here are to, in any situation, to be able to reliably and confidently handle objects using appropriate grip force, appropriate grip patterns, and appropriate speed and hand positioning using the rotator. So they are going to be learning to grasp objects, pre-position their system to optimize their reach, and also to optimize the appropriate grip pattern for an object they're trying to manipulate. So you're going to be focusing on training with objects in this particular phase of training. This requires many variations, repetitions, and combinations of exercise with a wide variety of objects. So you're going to want to have them grasping different objects, different sizes, shapes, weights, and manipulating them in space in different ways so that they learn how to use their hand most effectively and most precisely in activities. So you also want to look in this phase for compensatory motions. You may see this particular user is creating some compensatory motions. And so the goal here would be to try to train them to use the features and functions of the hand to try and eliminate or at least reduce those compensatory motions as much as possible. So the last stage of training is the ABL training. So the goals here are to use bimanual functions, so using their sound side and their affected side together to confidently manipulate objects that they use in their particular daily life. So we're going to really focus on things that this particular user needs to accomplish in their daily life to make their lives easier and to make them more functional. We want to make sure that they're using the process to its best advantage, that they are using grasp patterns that are appropriate for the activities, and that they are able to access those in a quick and repeatable way. So the whole goal at the end of this training is that they are able to fully attain integration of their prosthesis into their daily lives for the activities that matter to them, and that they're able to have maximum autonomy and independence with their prosthesis. At Ottobock, we have a lot of resources available to you, and I encourage you, if you're going to fit one of these systems, to please access the resources that we have available. There's a very long link here on your screen you can see to access the YouTube videos for the Myo Plus system, but you can simply go to the search feature in YouTube and type in Ottobock Myo Plus, and you will get a great number of different videos that come up that show you how to utilize the system. For example, how to use the Myo Plus cup to evaluate the system, how to prepare your interim fitting or your check socket fitting, et cetera, et cetera. We also have a great deal of resources on our Ottobock homepage, which is at shop.ottobock.us. We have our qualification course. If you would like to fit the system, you'll need to go online and take the qualification course, which will then allow us to provide you with an unlock pin to access the clinical features of the Myo Plus system on the app. There's also training here for the occupational therapist, and then we have an online resource center that has a great deal of documents, as you can see here, for various aspects of fitting the system, training it, and instructions for the user, et cetera, reimbursement information. All these documents are available to you for download on our Ottobock webpage. We also have available to you our Ottobock Professional and Clinical Services team. We have several individuals on our team that are capable of helping you with doing trials with the Myo Plus system or the bebionic hand. We can do strategic visits with you. We can provide education both in person or online. We're able to do FaceTime support, so if you would like help via FaceTime for a fitting or a trial, we're available for that. We're always available by telephone or for email support or via text. And we also have cooperative care, which is our comprehensive clinical process that we are able to come in and do everything with you from start to finish for a fee. And so we can assist you in any number of different ways, depending what your particular needs are with your particular clinical situation or with your particular patient situation. We also have our upper limb key account managers that can work with you to determine what of these services we can provide for you and to help you with your upper limb business in general. So with that, I'd like to thank you for joining.
Thank you for watching this previously recorded Experts on Demand webinar by Ottobock. Please click the link in the video description to access the quiz and submit for continuing education credit. If you have any questions, please contact the education team at 1-800-328-4058 or via email at us.education@ottobock.com.